ancient biblical prophets wrote about the future. Today, theologians are poring over those scriptures with a firm belief that their prophecies are coming to pass. Journey now into the world of eschatology on Prophecy in the News with author and lecturer J.R. Church.
On today's Prophecy in the News, we're going to talk about Micah chapter 7. And in that passage, God tells the Jewish people that the good man will disappear out of the earth, hence the rapture. Gary Stimmer is here to discuss with me Micah chapter 7.
And J.R., you know, this, among many, many other verses in the Bible, or passages in the Bible, lets us know when is the general season of the rapture. Now, I know a lot of people today are asking the question, well, since you can't know the exact date, what about the times and seasons? Well, I think we have one of the seasons prominently mentioned here, and by the way, that ties in with several other passages in the Old Testament and the New Testament concerning the rapture of the church.
Mm-hmm. Micah chapter 7 has been one of the fascinating chapters for many years for me. In chapter 7 and verse 1, Micah writes, "Woe is me," I think he's speaking here as a Jew, "Woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits." In other words, the great gathering has been gathered in. The harvest is over. The rapture has occurred.
And let's just stop and think about that for a moment. I love peaches. And around here in Oklahoma, we watch with anticipation every spring when the peach trees bloom. And the big worry is, will a late freeze kill the blossoms and kill our peach crop? And so we watch in March, April, as the blossoms develop the young fruit. And then as we go into late May, June, we begin to have peaches. Now, this observation by Micah really sets the season of the rapture as that time when the summer fruit's been harvested. It's all gone, the trees have been stripped clean, and now it's summer. Well, the rapture may be a springtime event.
You reckon?
Could it be?
We're going into the summer now, you know, into the spring. This is 1999. A lot of things are happening all over the world. As we consider these various events, we're looking at chapter 7 of Micah to glean from it some kernel of truth, some golden nugget hidden beneath the surface. Gary, I have long believed that the rapture will occur when the battle of Gog and Magog takes place. And Micah chapter 7 seems to concur with that theory.
It really does, J.R., because here in one passage we have not only a season, but we have the obvious truth that something horrendous has befallen planet Earth, and the Jew has lost his best friend. And right now, today, we know who the best friend of the Jew is, and that just happens to be the Bible-believing Christian who studies prophecy.
Yeah. And so I continue, "There is no cluster to eat. My soul desired the first ripe fruit. The good man is perished out of the earth. There is none upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood." In other words, this is the total corruption of society, Gary. The good man is gone. Now let's discuss this. Good man is perished out of the earth. For one thing, the word perish here is a very interesting Hebrew word. It is, you know, there are 15 Hebrew words translated perish, most of them pretty bloody, but this particular one means to cause to disappear.
That's right.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew lexicon, which is considered by many to be the ultimate authority. And I read that one of the major meanings of the word ovad, translated perish, as in perished out of the earth, is, and I quote, to cause to vanish, to blot out, or to do completely away with. Now, that's a great definition of rapture to me, to cause to vanish.
Yeah. And in one commentary I read, the example was Elijah taken up in a fire chariot. I like that.
Yes.
Now let's consider this disappear for just a moment. Why did they call it perish? I think there's a reason for that. But first, let's think of who's disappeared down through history. You know, Flavius Josephus talks about Moses on the last day of his life. And Flavius Josephus writes that they wrote that Moses died, but they really didn't know what happened to him because, according to Josephus, Moses had just given his last address to the congregation of Israel and told them not to weep for him. And then he turned to address Eleazar, the high priest, and Joshua. And as he started toward them, I guess, you know, to give them a hug and say his goodbyes or shake hands or whatever, a cloud appeared above his head and he vanished right before their eyes. Hey, Gary, is that what's going to happen here?
Well, JR, that's what we imagine the rapture will be like, and certainly, though Moses died in a sense, he was also taken alive because later he was seen with Elijah, the other man, to have been raptured.
Taken up in a fiery chariot.
Yeah, he was taken up in a fiery chariot. How much of a coincidence is it that Moses and Elijah were seen together on the Mount of Transfiguration?
And that in chapter 11 of Revelation, 2 witnesses will return to deliver a message to the people in the tribulation period, and they have the characteristics of these 2 men, Moses and Elijah. Mm-hmm. And so here in chapter 7, we have a disappearing. We have the good men is perished out of the earth. Now I want you to know that every good man is gone. Not one good man is left behind. Mm-hmm. Not one, no partial rapture. Mm-hmm. They're all gone.
All gone.
And he says, there is none upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood. That sounds like riots, doesn't it?
It does. Or robbery, street robbery, terrorism. Could be a lot of things.
And then he goes on to say, they hunt every man his brother with a net, that they may do evil with both hands earnestly. The prince asketh, and the judge asketh for a reward. That is, the politicians take bribes. I can't imagine such a thing, can you?
Unheard of, JR. A politician taking a bribe?
Mercy. It sounds like they have the best politicians money can buy. And,
it does.
Then it says, and the great man, he uttereth his mischievous desire. Wonder who that great man is. You suppose this is the Antichrist he's talking about here?
Well, according to Bible prophecy, JR, the Antichrist will be the greatest of great men in that horrible day.
He uttereth his mischievous desire, so they wrapped it up. The best of them is as a briar, and the most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge. The day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. First of all, Gary, it talks about them being the very best is like a briar and a thorn hedge. You know, this is the type of metaphor used of the Antichrist.
It really is. Of course, what we have here is the biblical metaphor of the good fruit, which is gone now. And the only thing that's left is weeds, thorns, briars.
In all the earth.
In all the earth. And JR, this is written from the point of view of Israel. Micah gives a prophecy for Israel in the latter days, and he says, now, in verse 4, now shall be their perplexity. In other words, the time has come for that long-awaited day of horror, and I believe he's referring to the time of Jacob's trouble. And so the good, if you will, fruit of the earth has disappeared, leaving only the weeds. That's, imagine yourself being one of the 144,000, for example, the elect of Israel, coming to the stark realization that the good man is gone. Everyone who's left is absolutely evil, and they're coming after you. That's got to be the definition of fear.
Yeah. And it's got to be a pre-tribulation rapture.
Yes, indeed.
If we're all going to be gone. I like
How
that.
How true.
And once we are, listen now, it says, the day of thy visitation, and the day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. What day is that? Well, listen to the Jerusalem Bible, and it translates it, today will come their ordeal from the north. Now is the time for their confusion. Gary, why the word north?
You know, JR, this is where this text gets very, very interesting. Again, if you read this in the KJV, the authorized version, the day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. That word watchman in the Jerusalem Bible is translated from the north. Now, we're coming up on a break, and you've got to hear the explanation of why one Bible would translate watchman and another, using the same exact word, would translate north. And when you realize what the truth is and how it applies to today in Bible prophecy, you'll be amazed.
And basically, the bottom line is this. The rapture is going to occur on a day of an invasion of Israel. A worldwide nuclear war. What would be a better cover for the rapture than that? We'll be back to tell you all about it, so don't go away. We'll be back in just a moment. According to the book of Micah, chapter 7, an invasion will take place. The day of thy watchman is the way the King James Version reads it. The day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. But this word watchman is an interesting Hebrew word. It means far more than just the watchmen of old, that is the prophets, the military men, I guess, who were on the walls of the city and watching for enemy armies. This is national defense, isn't it?
That's right.
Tell us about this watchman.
What we have here is the day of thy watchman in Micah 7:4. And J.R., this is fascinating because this is the word mitzvah in Hebrew, watchman. And it contains, if you listen carefully, mitzvah, you can hear the little word root tzafan, which lies in the middle of the word watchman. Well, the word tzafan rightly means north, but it can also mean something which is hidden. Like many, many Hebrew words, it's a combination word. It can mean that which is hidden, it can mean north, it can also mean code, it can mean to hide or conceal. And that's where we get the idea of the watchman. The watchman is looking and he's searching out something which is hidden or concealed. And when he spots it, the verb root is tzafan, the north. That is, he's looking for something that's coming, in this passage, from the north. And this is the way it's translated in the Jerusalem Bible.
And the word code is there.
The word code.
Now, you know, we think of our watchmen as the CIA.
Yes, we do.
And they always speak in coded language so that nobody can eavesdrop.
Well, you know, spies...
Is that what's implied here as well?
I believe you could very well put in here the CIA, the Mossad. These are watchmen, J.R. They are watchers. They're spying out enemy secrets. They are searching to see the first little sign that somebody is moving.
Yes, and for this Jerusalem Bible to say, today will come their ordeal from the north, is awesome to think.
It is.
Because you see, Russia today is preparing for war. In fact, as we speak, as we do this television program, our nation is about to go to war in Kosovo, and the Prime Minister of Russia was on his way to the United States for a visit over the Atlantic, decided to turn around and go back home. This is an awesome sign. It's very possible that we're about to see the beginning of, shall we say, World War III.
Yes, and as we speak, these things have only just begun. We can't say how they'll come out in days to come, but we do know that the Russians are preparing for war. That's been documented, J.R., without a question.
Yes, and we've talked about that on previous programs.
Yes, we have. They're pretending or feigning poverty right now, but in fact they're pouring multiplied millions into the development of high-tech weapons. And several commentators have pointed out that they appear to be preparing for an imminent invasion. Well, where would they invade? The Bible makes that crystal clear.
Israel.
Israel.
And don't forget now, on May the 4th, Yasser Arafat has declared that he will establish a Palestinian nation, a sovereign Palestinian state, with Jerusalem as its capital city on May the 4th. Of course, this happens to be the 33rd day in the counting of the Omer from the Feast of First Fruits to Pentecost. And every year at that time, on that day, for centuries, the Jews' custom is to give bows and arrows to their children to play war games. And I've heard that this is the day they believe the Battle of Gog and Magog will occur.
Now stop and think about this again. Reading in the authorized version, Micah 7:4. The best of them is as a briar, the most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge. The day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh, now shall be their perplexity. J.R., Ezekiel 38 just looms up in my mind when I read this.
Yeah.
Because, and you stop and think about it, the day of thy watchman, what does that mean in plain English? The watchman would be watching every day. We know, for example, the CIA doesn't take a day off. It watches every day. The Mossad, Israel, watches every day. So what, if they're watching every day, what does this mean? The day of thy watchman. It means the day they've been watching for all this time.
That's right. The day Ezekiel talked about in chapter 38.
That's right.
That's the day that he's referring to here. The day that has been long predicted has come upon you. It's an invasion from the north, an invasion of Israel by Gog and Magog, the Russian invasion with Persia. Iran is going to be in on this.
Yes, indeed.
And all that we have read in verses 1 through 3 describes martial law as a result of this invasion. Suddenly martial law everywhere as the world panics. Now shall be their perplexity. Can't you just see the panic by the people?
And by the way, speaking of perplexity, there's a lot of panic afoot today. There's a lot of fear-mongering. People are talking about global catastrophes of various kinds, the year 2000 computer problem, will we have food, will we have fuel, will we have electricity? There is an atmosphere of perplexity already present. And now, according to this verse, shall be their perplexity. In other words, there will be a day when that perplexity comes to life in a horrible way.
You know, May 1st, our National Guard, along with, I think, other branches of the military, are going to be in practice for riots and Y2K problems, and perhaps even terrorists who might bring some kind of chemical or biological warfare to the cities, to the drinking water, to let it loose in our cities in the air. It seems, you know, the things that face us as a nation are awesome. And it's kind of interesting that it'll be on May 1st, Gary, because May 1st is a birthday of the Illuminati. Well, it's the big May Day celebration of the communists. You know, it's Communist birthday.
Our own Secretary of Defense has warned us against domestic terrorism, hinting darkly that it could come to pass in our day.
What a perplexity there would be if it did.
Oh, tremendous perplexity. But J.R., what amazes me in all this is the position of the church. Because invariably, when this day is spoken of, the church is spoken of not in terms of perplexity, but in terms of joy, in terms of salvation, the blessed hope, etc., etc. And we have here the Jewish view, which is perplexity. They're not going to be going and leaving this scene at all.
Yeah. About that word code, Gary.
Yes.
In verse 2, the good man is perished out of the earth, or has disappeared out of the earth. That's not out of the land now, it's out of the world, okay? The interesting thing about this particular verse is that encoded at 25-letter intervals is the Hebrew word for the rapture, not Saul.
Not Saul.
This was brought to our attention by Yaakov Ramsel, the author of the book, Yeshua. I think that's fascinating.
It is fascinating, and of course, he's done a lot of work lately discovering that the encoding of the word for rapture throughout the Bible, throughout the Old Testament. J.R., I think we should talk about one other thing, and that is the very grave possibility that our government right now is not favoring Israel diplomatically. We've noted over the past few months that our State Department seems to have turned away from Israel toward the Arabs. And as we speak, the First Lady has been touring the United Arab Republic and currying favor. We find that our diplomatic corps is currying favor with the Arabs. And wouldn't you know that the Kosovo Albanians and the Bosnians are Islamic. And they have been put upon harshly by Slobodan Milosevic and the Serbs, but we have come down in favor of the Islamic side in Kosovo. Again, currying favor with the Islamics, and this could be the foundational element in this whole operation. That is to say, this may be what's making the whole operation tick, our desire to curry favor with the Arabs or with the Islamics of the world in order to stave off their terrorist incursion into the United States. This is just one idea, it's just an opinion, but...
Is it possible, Gary, the rapture could occur this year? I'm not here to tell you when it will occur, but it is kind of interesting that there are some who have suggested, I'm talking about men who are well respected and study prophecy, have suggested September 10th, Rosh Hashanah, for the rapture date this year. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with that. My personal opinion is the rapture could occur at any moment. But it is kind of interesting that they feel that, many feel that this year is going to be an awesome, absolutely epic year. And I think that if there's anything at all we can do, it's to pray and receive Christ as Savior. If you're not a Christian, to be born again. Just tell the Lord you know you're a sinner and ask Him to forgive you and save you. He will if you'll ask Him. And then you can be prepared for when we hear that shout and the trumpet sound. For one of these days, when the bombs come down, we're going up before the blow-up. I like that. Go up before the blow-up.
Amen.
We'll be back in just a moment.